sit down, now I can't hardly move. It's amazing how old I'm getting. I look pretty good in that picture over there. I need to go back and figure out how to get back to that. You know, this is a great opportunity to share my story. It's a story that I'm probably going to have a hard time telling this story because somebody knows me from those times that I went to school with. But for 25 years after I left Auburn, I was approached on many occasions for doing a book on my life, my situation, but I wouldn't do it. I didn't want to talk about it. Have you ever been involved in anything or done something or been a part of something that was considered maybe pretty bad, that if you ever started talking about it, you just felt like you'd start crying and just never stop? Well, that's what this book's about. Because I can tell you today that whenever I started doing the book, I cried for 3 to 4 months. I didn't think I was going to stop. And I know me. I know the whole story. How many of you here remember me playing at Auburn? All right, it's getting better. I had one a couple of weeks ago that won. I didn't get shut out, thank goodness. I guess to start with, to tell my story, is that I like to kind of give a baseline to my Auburn career and what I accomplished, and that was I was a walk-on. I was never recruited. I played 1 year of high school football, and that was my senior year. I was the first 4-year starter as a punter at Auburn University. I was the first All-American punter at Auburn University. Made All SEC, Team of the Decade, Team of the Century, first 100 years of Auburn football. Drafted, first punter taken in 1986 in the 8th round by the Kansas City Chiefs. But most importantly, or the one that I feel that's closest to my heart and the one that really means the most, is I was voted team captain of the 1985 Auburn Tigers, along with Bo Jackson and Harold Hall. That was a time whenever I felt like that I finally started overcoming some of the things that I dealt with growing up. My football career was pretty nice, pretty fun, accomplished a lot of things. However, what most people don't know, and I was really surprised by it, when I was at Auburn, I wouldn't talk about it. I got caught a few times. Reporter asked me a question, and I would answer just his question asked. I never elaborated because I didn't want to talk about it. But I accomplished all that as a punter, and I was born with a severe physical handicap. I was born with club feet. The left one wasn't really that bad. They were able to correct it with casts. However, my right leg stopped at the ankle. It was rotated 90 degrees, folded in half, and folded in half again to the back side of my leg. And parts of it were growing into my leg. At 3 days old, I underwent the first surgery, and that's they broke my foot in 3 different places to turn it around. And at the end of the first surgery, my leg was straight out. There was no form, no ankle movement. 3 additional surgeries had to be made to even get it somewhat functional. On the 4th day, my dad returned to the hospital. He had dropped my mom off at the hospital and went back home. My mom informed him of the situation, my handicap, and that we were going to be into some tough times, a lot of pain, a lot of therapy, a lot of just trying to be able to walk. They gave me a 10% chance of ever walking. And they said of that 10%, if you do walk, or if he does walk, it's going to be with a limp, or it's going to be with some kind of device to aid. He will not ever walk normal. My story is about overcoming adversity. And the first adversity I faced, obviously, was my physical handicap, but then it turned into emotional issues. Because on that fourth day when my dad returned, he told my mom that I would not be coming home with him. He died when I was 5. My mom never remarried. Really. She attempted it once, it didn't go well. He had pretty much was headed down the same road as my true father. So, however, my brother took the role of my father, who was 14 years older than I was. They were both abusive, alcoholic men. The whole time I was growing up, I had to deal with it. And the way I dealt with it is I got out of the house. I found sports. Baseball was my love, but it was not easy. The pain was overwhelming. But I had a stronger desire to try to make something better for myself down the road, and I stayed after it. Baseball, I played pretty good baseball, what do you think? Mm-hmm. We won 3 state championships when I was there, won 3 more state championships in the summer league, went to 2 World Series, won one of them. I was headed to school to play baseball, had scholarship offers. My senior year, I never lost a game pitching. And my senior year of all time, I'm pitching state championship game, which we won 1-0, and I supposedly tore my rotator cuff. Something tore in my shoulder, and that's what they told me it was. It ended my baseball career. I wouldn't let them operate because of all the surgeries I've been through. I tried football 3 different times, 8th, 9th, and 10th grade. All of them ended tragically with injuries to my right leg, ankle. I spent more time in braces and ace bandages and taped that you can imagine. But you're not going to make it to a higher level, or you're not going to accomplish things that you want to accomplish in life just by walking away. So I found a way to play football, but for 2 years I was a manager for the Glenwood Gators. And at that time, I started picking up a football. Had one coach show me how to hold it, and nobody showed me anything since. But every time I punted that football, it was sheer pain. It hurt beyond belief. But I still continued to punt the football. In my senior year, I went to the coach and asked him, could I punt? I couldn't play a real position, and he made a special exception and allowed me to punt. Made All-State that year. However, like I said about my baseball coming around, I wasn't really worried about football. I had baseball in mind. Well, that ended, so I borrowed money, and I went to Auburn. I was just going to go to school. In that auditorium, a lady calls out my name. I go walking down to the front. She hands me a note, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I'm walking back to my seat, walking up those steps, and I start unfolding it. And I stopped right in the middle of the aisle. There was a note that said, Coach Dye wanted to see me. 30 minutes later, I was sitting in front of him talking to him. And for once and finally in my life, I had a father figure. He offered me a chance to walk on. It was the beginning of the changing of my life forever. It's 1981, I walked on at Auburn University, unrecruited. 17 other kickers and punters out there on the field. Wow. Every one of them, I must have been the smallest. Every one of them were over 6 foot tall. I was 5'8", 5'9", maybe 160 pounds. By spring, I'd made it to 2nd Street. And if this isn't divine intervention story that I'm about to tell you, or situation, I don't know what really is. Spring game of 1982, the first string punter punts a football that gets returned, and he has to make a tackle. He breaks his right ankle. And I go to number 1 on the depth chart. The whole time that I was growing up, I questioned, what was happening to me or what I was dealing with. What did I ever do to deserve it? I grew up angry, resentful, dealing with stuff at home, trying to make it look normal when I went anywhere else, when I was out in public. My leg, my foot, so much resentment, so much anger that was just really just causing problems in my life. And to me, it was the root of all the problems. I even felt like that was causing the things at home. To turn around to have an ankle broken, to turn around to have my right leg and ankle be the very vehicle that changes my life forever. Somebody was talking to me and I wasn't listening. And it took me 25 years before I did listen. And it took a brush with my own mortality before I even woke up and listened then. Because 3.5 years ago, I almost died from pneumonia. After that spring game, we go through the summer and I go home to work because I needed to make some money to be able to do things at Auburn. Come back, we're in fall practice, and the end of August of fall practice, 1 week before the first game, Coach Dye calls me into my office, his office, my mom's sitting there, and he offers me a scholarship. That definitely changed my life forever.
Amen.
Because I don't know how I was going to pay for it. We were just having a conversation what that first year cost, and it's minuscule compared to what it's costing me now.
Didn't seem like it.
But it changed my life. It gave me an opportunity, and Coach Dye has been a mentor, father figure to me ever since. He agreed to write the foreword to the book. And honestly, when I was scared to death when I went to talk to him. Something about that man just scares the little daylights out of me, but I respect him and love him to death. I don't get it. He's a great man and he's made a lot of difference in a lot of people's lives, not just mine. So I'll go on and be the first 4-year starter, the first All-American. But, it's more important things about this book and messages that I'm trying to get across to young people. And, some of them are just as simple as it's okay to be different. Wished I'd have known that when I was in school. Might have been a lot easier to deal with it. Messages of, be aware of what's going on around you and, have conversations with your friends and lend a helping hand whenever you got a chance. Sometimes that person that you may be talking to may not want to talk. And from where I was that person that didn't want to talk. You got to find a way to get them to talk. And the more opportunities I get to talk to young kids and people and finding a way, I can recognize it so much better now. You know, scars, they remind you where you've been and what you've been through, but they don't have to define you. I let mine define me way too long. There's tough times out there. There really is. And I'm just looking for an opportunity to make a difference. You know, I can tell you that the day that I understood what team was all about, that was 1983, Auburn, Alabama game. No, it was 82, excuse me. I'm getting my games mixed up because it's my first Alabama game. I walk onto the field, I was scared to death. Y'all been to an Alabama Auburn game? Yes. Imagine standing out there in the middle of that field, looking around, especially then you're a punter. And everybody understands which one's the punter out there, right? Because he's standing by himself.
And you're in Birmingham.
Right?
Birmingham then too.
He messes up, I think everybody's going to know it. And I guess Dennis Collier, my personal protector, he could see it in my eyes. I honestly don't ever remember being scared on a football game, I feel, except that one. And it did. That was my first Alabama game, and all I could hear was punt, Auburn, punt. Chant, 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 chant. And he turned around, and all that noise, and he started talking. And what's so crazy, he starts talking, and it's like every bit of that noise went away. I could hear him just like he was talking to me right now. And he's standing 7 yards away from me. But what he said to me was, Lewis, punt the ball like you've hunted it all year long. There ain't nobody getting by me. Okay. I mean, it was just like, okay. And from that day forward, I never did worry about it anymore. I never did worry about it anymore. I had somebody at Smoky Mountain Auburn Club last night to tell me, he goes, you know, I never remember you shaking a football. I'd never thought about it, but until he made that comment, and I went, I don't remember ever shaking one either. Not that I admit to it anyway, right? But seriously, I don't remember ever shaking one. I remember some short coffin corners, but I don't ever remember shaking one. And I truly believe that's because of the confidence and the team concept that I had, is that I did not worry about anything whenever that ball was snapped. I've had some close calls. You know, somebody missed somebody, but you know, it's after I done punted, I went, where'd he come from? It was close. But it's just amazing that sometimes the things you say, they can have the biggest effect, good or bad. You know, I've spent the last year and a half working on the book, talking to people, and I already know it's making a difference. I just need the time and opportunity to talk to as many people as I possibly can. I'm doing it as often as I can, as much as I can, that I can fit it into a schedule. Sometimes it's tough, and you don't know how lucky you really are. And I mean this from my perspective, is that I met a young woman. She had a daughter who was born with a clubfoot, and at 10 years old, they amputated it from the knee down. And I go back and think about all the things that I dealt with my doctors and growing up, and man, very fortunate to be where I am today. And moving forward, I want to make a difference and give back to as many as I can to make a difference. lot of great things out there. You know, just keep your head and your heart in the right direction. And in my case, what didn't allow me to do that is I was worried about my feet all the time, and now I don't. You don't have to worry about your feet if you keep your head and your heart in the right place. With that, I thank you all for letting me come. If anybody's got any questions, I'll be glad to answer questions.
With 17 other punters out there, what was it that Coach Dye saw that made him write you that note?
He never had seen me when he wrote that note. I had never met the man. To my knowledge, he never saw a game film. It was just because a friend of his was the uncle of a friend of mine, and they had a conversation at a family reunion.
That's some divine intervention right there.
And ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you that there was I was being guided to everything that I did, because there's 26, 27 different scenarios and situations in that book. If it would have happened this way, I wouldn't be here today. I mean, you know the old cliche, the fork in the road. There's tons of them. I mean, for example, my shoulder. I can honestly tell you, if I wouldn't have hurt my shoulder, I'd have never played football again. But here's the even more irony to that. 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I took a fall off a horse and I tore every tendon and ligament in the top of my shoulder. Have surgery on it. I'm laying in the recovery room. Doctor comes in, he goes, "You ever hurt that shoulder before?" I'm drugged up. Yeah. Rotator cuff. He goes, "Your rotator cuff's fine. Ain't nothing wrong with your rotator cuff at all." He goes, "Now you got a bursa sac that's flipped inside out. Bursa sac is very easily fixed."
Wow.
He goes, "I just put it back together and sewed it up. You're good as new." A year after that, after I knew my shoulder was fine, it's 150 yards from my back, right outside the back of my house, to our back fence. And I just picked up a rock. And he's right, my shoulder is fixed. Because I slung that rock over 150 yards. I was throwing almost 90 miles an hour as a senior in high school, weighing 165 pounds. And I've got a witness that could attest to that. I could prove it. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's so many times that, you know, even at Auburn, I'd watch them play baseball, and I'm like, "Oh, I wish I could play. God, I wish I could play." And I still wouldn't have my shoulder fixed. You know, I don't like getting operated on anymore. Sometimes you don't have a choice. But I will tell you this, though. What he did see different whenever I finally got out there amongst all of us is what caught his ear the first time, whenever we started punting and kind of weeding out, if you will. And I can't remember if you put it in the book, but
It's in the book.
he came looking for me because he was standing in the tower with his back to the kicker's field, and he goes, "Colbert's, when he hit the football, it was a totally different sound." He said it was like Mickey Mouse hitting the ball. So he heard the sound first, and then he come to find out who that was. And then it just progressed from there. But, I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying, is you just never know. You can't give up. Never, ever. Ever. And I didn't. I wanted it. I wanted it bad. what I really wanted was my education. Nobody in my family has ever been to college or higher education. Only one in my family has graduated high school.
How'd you wind up at Glenwood?
It's in the book. But since you asked the question, I got through out of Smith Station.
Oh. Well, since I was only there 2 years,
Yeah.
I didn't
Yep.
know all
I
that
got there.
juicy gossip.
Got there in the 10th grade, and that's because I got thrown out of Smith Station because I was living on Somerville Road, trying to still go to Smith Station because my mom moved from Smith Station, Phoenix City, closer to work.
Oh.
And the starting fullback lived down the street from me, but it was okay for him to go to Smith Station. It wasn't for me. You know, but I mean, because of the way I grew up, being hazed about my physical difference, you know, I kind of got past it at Smith Station, you know, and it was really difficult, really tough, and I did not want to change schools. And go through it again. And it was a big ordeal, trust me. That was one time that I actually did start speaking up and pitching fits. And, you know, they said that, you know, my mom said I was going to go to Central. Oh, no, I'm not. I've already been to one of the 6A schools, and Central was a rough place. And I was no fit for Central. And I said, if I have to go to Central, I'm quitting. And I didn't even know about Glenwood until, I mean, this ordeal happened all during the summer. So finally around August is when I showed up at Glenwood. And we had to make special arrangements with Glenwood to be able to pay for the tuition. But it was, I mean, if we wouldn't have moved, I'd have been at Smith Station, nothing ever happened. If it wouldn't have been for Glenwood, yeah, I'd have quit school.
Wow.
I wasn't going to Central. But it's, you know, I knew what I wanted, but, you know, there's sometimes you just, the way that it starts out, you've got to tweak it, change it, and find a way to make it work. And that's what we did. It's like we was talking earlier, the biomechanics of my foot and ankle and how it operates, or should I say the lack of how it operates. There's no way that I should have been punting football. Not like that. I mean, because my left foot, you press all the way, my right one's like this. I cannot depress my right foot all the way out. And for a punter, that's just not heard of. So I had to change the way I punted a football, where I kicked it, how high I kicked it, you know, when I dropped it. I had to do a lot of things different. And there's a lot of stories in there about people that made a difference in my life, that a lot of them didn't even know it. Any other questions?
Yeah. Can you speak on the, you know, the sort of insight and catharsis that led you to write the book, and then again, you know, sort of enlightenment of self sort of received on looking back in that way after completing the book? You said it was a story you wouldn't tell for a long time.
Right.
What was it that led you to feel that this was the right time?
One was me almost dying. It's been on my mind for a long time. I just never felt comfortable about it. I talked to Coach Dye about it. It was...
Tell him what Coach Dye told you, though, when you talked to him.
Whenever I talked to him, he said that, you know, it's a story that has to be told. And if you don't tell it, it won't ever be told. And then that's when I posed, well, if you'll do the forward on it, then I'll tell the story. And he agreed. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. And actually, I think it's harder than Coach Dye's off-season workouts. But It is absolutely the best thing I've ever done. I mean, I cannot even, and I'm still, because I'm only 5 months into this, really, I'm still perfecting, I'm still trying to put it in words of the difference in how I feel, how I act, how I think. You know, I carried around a lot of baggage with me for a long time. And I didn't even realize I had it. And you know, Coach Dodd was correct in his forward about being, that I was the most mentally tough individual he ever met. Yeah, I was. But not for the right reasons, not for that. But it served me so well because I wouldn't give up. You know, my high school coach was going to tell me I couldn't play football anymore, but when I come back from the doctor on crutches and a brace, I went to him and said I had to give up. Sammy Howard told me that about 6 months ago. But when I come back, he was about, I mean, it was like he was just fixing to say, you can't play no more. You're going to get killed. But I said, Coach, I can't do it. My leg would not allow me to do it. And so he never said anything. He just let it go. But it's a story that you're not going to hear very often. I assure you that. And there's a lot of tough stories out there, trust me, I do realize that. I do realize that. Anything else?
Appreciate you telling us.
Thank you so much.